AI and the subtle but beautiful shift that I see it beginning to create in our culture, and I'm hoping it goes more this way. This is an optimistic view of AI. Now, don't get me wrong, there are negatives with AI, and we have to be very. The negatives are so, I think, so inevitable and so real that we probably just don't even want to tamper with AI to begin with. Like, we probably just shouldn't, but it's coming. We probably just shouldn't, right? We just shouldn't, because you look at every major technological advancement, and they all come with what René Girard would have called a scapegoat. Anytime a new major advancement comes, the culture shifts drastically enough, and when there's a drastic shift in culture, basically an old culture dies and a new one is born. And in the new birth of the new culture, there has to be a scapegoat that becomes both, that kind of begins as less than human person, and then ends as a kind of God figure. And that scapegoat, it results in somebody dying, right? And ancestrally, traditionally, in like some of these cultures, that was manifested as child sacrifices. Children were actually killed to appease what people believed were gods, but were just the invisible parts of relationships. Because what happens, according to René Girard, is that people when there's scarcity, people get really intense, right? They get tense, and there's wars building up, and there's all this tension, and that tension has to be released, and it can be released by seeing one person who is a human, or one set of people that are humans, as less than human, and then basically attacking, violently killing that human that you don't see as a human. So first you see them as a demon, you scapegoat them, they leave the culture. That creates, first of all, less scarcity of whatever that resource is that is scarce, but also it kind of creates this almost soothing effect on the mind of the people that are still there, and this kind of relating effect. They can bond over this shared evil demon that they've scapegoated, that they've pushed away. And then over time, that demon, interestingly, and if you look at cultures, and according to René Girard, that demon becomes a god, or a godlike figure. So let me think of an example. Well, the child sacrifices. A lot of the children that were sacrificed in some of these cultures with the child sacrifices became gods. And Girard argues that like all the gods in the Greek myths were actually at one point a sacrifice, or a scapegoat. So I don't know. Those are all his theories, and some of them are really, some of them are really brilliant. So I don't know. It's worth thinking about anyway. There are negatives with AI. There's going to be scapegoats. There are going to be human lives cost, sadly. But there are also going to be a whole reality change. Our whole perception of reality changes with every advancement in technology. When the clock was invented, when people started being able to track time, we stopped depending on so much on the seasons, on the sun setting and rising. We stopped depending on, before that, like churches were the centers of communities, for the first 1,000 years, basically, of Christian history. So like 0 AD to 1000 AD. In these towns, I don't know, whenever the clock was invented, it was somewhere, maybe between 500 and 1,000. I have no idea when it was invented, really, but it was somewhere around there. And so these Christian communities, these communities that were evolved around a church, had church bells. And that was the way that everybody knew to get to church. It wasn't because they had a clock in their house telling them to be on time. And punctuality, just, if you look at cultures still that haven't adopted, especially like more primitive cultures that haven't fully adopted clocks or timekeeping, they just don't have, punctuality is It's nothing to them. It means nothing. It's not a virtue. It's just nothing. They just don't even. It's like, well, yeah, sometime after the sun is at the highest point in the day, we'll get together, or we're already together all the time anyway. So it's changed us so deeply, so deeply that we can't even see it. We can't even see all of its depth. And that's going to happen with AI too. Our whole perception of the world is going to change. Our reality is going to change. And that's terrifying. But for this video, even though I've already rambled about, some of the negatives and potential drawbacks, because I just think it's so important that we keep those in mind and consider those all the time. For the rest of this video, though, I want to talk about an optimistic view about two things that I see coming that I think once I point them out to you, they're pretty obvious. They're, I think, positive shifts that are going to happen. And so, the first one is from a book that I heard about, actually called I think it was The Last Human Job. And it's the idea that, when all of the industrial type jobs can be taken and can be done by AI and by robotics, so like learned by AI and then completed by robotics, when all of that can be done, the only jobs left for human beings will be the jobs of that AI and robotics just cannot do. Connection, love, compassion, empathy, listening, presence, just being present with one another. And so as AI becomes abundant and robotics become abundant, there's going to be abundance doing that work. And so it's going to be less valuable because there's so much supply, essentially, that the demand is going to become, or that the value of it is going to become less. And relative to that value is the value of every other job. And like the jobs of connection and compassion and love and empathy and listening and presence are going to become more valuable because all the industrial mechanistic type jobs are going to be so not valuable, if that makes sense. But essentially, the jobs that are going to be there for human beings are going to be the ones that really are things that just cannot be replaced by artificial intelligence or by robots. Mostly relationship type stuff. This is the second thing. This is what I'm noticing, and I'll show you. Explain to you even where I'm noticing it. And I don't think anybody's pointed this out before, but I think once I point it out to you, it's pretty obvious, and I don't think it needs a whole lot of explanation to just be clear. But I'll explain here. So I think what we're going to see is a shift from a culture that values answers to a culture that values questions. From a culture that values systems and solutions and how-tos and guides and manuals to a culture that values wonder and curiosity and questions and questioning. And so the reason I think this shift is coming is because answers are now already abundant. AI can create YouTube videos that have, that can answer any question, that can give you some kind of a system or solution to solve any problem that can be solved by a solution or system. Not all problems can be. Some problems can only be solved by presence, right? Or some problems just can't be solved. But any problem that can be solved with an answer, AI can give that answer to solve that problem. 50 years ago, you'd have to, find an answer, to have an answer, you'd have to go to the library. You'd have to search through this big, long card catalog with the Dewey Decimal System. You'd have to understand the Dewey Decimal System. And then you'd have to go around the library, hope the library has some information on what you're looking for. And it may not, so then you'd have to go to other libraries. I mean, it was this huge physical, material, time-consuming, space physical space oriented process that you had to do to get any kind of answers. If I wanted to learn about, psychology, I had to go probably to like a psychology section in a library, or maybe a specific library dedicated to psychology. I had to go to university. And this is just not the case anymore. Today, you can learn everything about psychology that you would ever want to know, or that any human mind can possibly comprehend by going to artificial intelligence, essentially. There's some edge cases, obviously, like somebody who is like on the cutting edge of psychology and coming out with a new idea. You're probably not going to get that from AI or from like a Google search even. You're probably going to have to be studying under that person, doing that research. But, for most information, you can just get answers right there. Just studying it and reflecting on it. There's very little physical or material cost. And so answers become abundant and they become less valuable because of their abundance. So you don't even have to think to get answers anymore. AI can actually think for you. So like it's even become that abundant to get answers. But AI has more trouble asking questions, like new questions, curious questions, wondering. So now I want to kind of go into an example to just explain this, kind of drive it home a little more. So if you look at YouTube, or when I look at YouTube, I see a lot more content that is AI generated, and you can usually tell it's like usually like some AI generated art and like a few clips of that cycled over and over, with the Ken Burns effects where it zooms in on the picture a little bit and then it switches to another picture and it scrolls sideways on that picture and then it switches to another picture. That's the background, that's the video. And then there's like text, there's subtitles. And then there's an AI voice reading AI generated text about something, answering some question. And I'm seeing lots and lots more of this on YouTube. And some of these channels that have this have substantial amounts of subscribers and viewers and views. So it's not nothing. And it's out there, and there's a decent amount of it. And there's just going to be more and more because it's so cheap and easy to produce these that you can produce a video like that with almost no cost, no time, that explains all the stuff, all the information, gives all the information, explains anything. But rarely do I watch these videos that I see. I see and I think, oh, another AI video. Yep, information is abundant. It sure is. And then I scroll past it. So part of that is that I like there is some kind of human presence that comes through in a video like I'm doing right now, right? You can tell the difference between AI and humans. So far you can. There are some pretty convincing videos that look like a human being talking, but they're AI. But you can, if you pay attention, you can still kind of sense something so far. But one day you won't be able to. But that doesn't matter for this anyway, because my point is that I'm seeing a whole bunch of these. I'm seeing more and more of these videos that can answer any question. I don't click on them usually, but every once in a while I do click on one. And I've thought about it. I was like, why did I just watch this AI video when, like, every time I see an AI video, I'm like, oh, another AI video. Like, nope, somebody didn't put any effort into this, and it's just AI generated answers, and I'm like, eh. And then I click one, and I'm like, why did I click that? And then I watch it, and I'm like, that was interesting. Why did I watch that? And I'm thinking about it, And so one example of a video I wrote down here is one of the title of the video is "Why a Fed Up Empath is More Dangerous Than the Narcissist Ever Knew." and then it said Carl Jung. And so, that implies it's using Carl Jung's ideas, looking at empaths versus narcissists, which we know is a very interesting combination of human beings, and why the empath is more dangerous. That's interesting. It's interesting, right? And so it's not just that this video had answers for me. It's that I could get answers to that from ChatGPT, easy right now. But what was interesting was the question that the video asked: why is an empath more dangerous than a narcissist, according to Carl Jung? Like, that is interesting, right? I want to kind of curious about that now, and so it was the question that was the important part there that got me interested, not the answer. I could get the answer easily. But the question was posed, and I'd never heard or thought of that question before. I've never thought of that before. And since someone else already did the work of posing the question and then putting a video together, I clicked it and I watched it. And I wanted to see the answer, and I listened, and it was interesting. So I don't know if you see the pattern. It's the question was interesting, basically. And I think we're going to see that more and more, that it's not the one who can answer questions, but the one who can ask the most interesting questions, the one who can wonder the most deeply, right? The one who is curious. That'll be the most prized and valued content, or even just essentially questions. I think are going to be a lot more valuable than answers, and maybe they always were, but it's going to be a lot more clear now. And so I want to just offer a warning and a suggestion about this. So the warning is that we have to be careful that when we ask questions, we're always willing to accept mystery and accept not having answers. Because if we refuse to accept things, then we either come up with a lie to explain it. And this is going to happen with AI a lot. AI will do this. It will lie to explain something instead of saying it doesn't know. So we have to be very careful of that. We have to make sure that we can accept when something can't be answered. So we either come up with a lie to answer it, or we go crazy and start yelling and cursing and becoming angry and resentful. And that's not healthy either. So we got to be able to accept mystery and understand that there is mystery. And so my suggestion is just, ask questions. Don't worry so much about the answer. Maybe that means many of the questions we ask have no purpose, or may seem pointless. But not everything needs to have a point or a purpose to be meaningful. So those are my thoughts. AI, presence, compassion, listening, empathy, those are going to be huge. And having answers is it's not going to be so big. Asking interesting questions will be. Getting text. But yeah, that's it. Those are my thoughts right now on maybe that's as optimistic and maybe realistic as a view of AI as I can give right now. So anyway, thank you for watching. I'm sure that there are some people with some thoughts on this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. And let me know.